Hello and welcome back to Rec and Roll. So today I want to bring you guys a video that I've been meaning to put out for a number of weeks, and it is a little bit later than I ideally would have liked because I would have liked to have had this out before the Kickstarter campaign for the X-Men kind of like second wave of releases for this game finished up, and then as part of that Kickstarter, you were able to get in and order some of the expansions for this first wave of releases, which are Kickstarter exclusive. However, don't panic, don't freak out. For the last number of campaigns that I've seen, Come On Games, who is kind of like taking lead role, they have done a pledge manager later where you're able to kind of get late access to that. So don't freak out too much yet if you want to jump in on this and if you are looking to get some of the original releases. So, Marvel United is a 1 to 4 player cooperative game where you are playing as a team of Marvel superheroes and you are teaming up to take down a supervillain. Now, in the kind of base game right here, it comes with 7 heroes. So as you guys can see pictured right there, you have Iron Man, Hulk, Black Widow, Captain America, and Captain Marvel. And then even though they're not pictured there, you also have Ant-Man and the Wasp as well. Now, it should be noted that if you happen to get this game at Walmart, it does not include Wasp, but it does include Venom. So it's important to note that if you intend to get that like Kickstarter exclusive kind of like expansion, like the extras that they throw in as stretch goals for the campaign doing well. If you intend to get the stretch goal box for this first Marvel United, which is General Marvel as opposed to X-Men, um, you probably want to get the standard starter, get it from Amazon, get it from your local gaming store, get it from wherever, right? Because that's going to have Wasp. And Wasp is not in that stretch goal box, but the Venom hero is. It also has a Venom villain as well. I know that's really confusing and a lot to throw at you in the first couple of minutes here, but if you decide that you're going to just stop right now and then go buy this game, if you are someone who's a total completionist, that's important for you to know. Villain-wise, the core box includes Red Skull, Ultron, and Taskmaster as well. Now, my plan here is to kind of walk you guys through an overview of the gameplay, and then after that to give you my impressions of the game so far. Not quite a review. I've played a decent amount of this game, but I don't quite feel as if I have enough sessions under my belt to give you a full-on review. But I will tell you right now that I'm going to be very positive about this game. One other thing that I would like to note is that you see kind of under this box and making some appearances during some of these next few segments that I'll show you is a playmat. Now this playmat is neoprene, which means that it is a mouse pad type of material, and then beyond that, it's also stitched on the edges, which is also very nice. What's neat about this is that it helps to kind of like, for the general flow of the game, it gives you a layout for where things go. This is not necessary, and it is also not included in that base game. This was a Kickstarter exclusive from the first wave of releases. There is a second mat which is available for the X-Men wave of releases that you'll be able to order. But I do want to point out this is not stock. It does not come with the game. You have to get it extra. But I do think that if you don't mind stretching out a little bit extra in terms of payment to get it, I do recommend it. You will also see at times this will disappear, and I might just show you kind of cards against a solid background. So I'm going to begin by talking to you guys about the setup for the game. All right, to begin with, let's take a look at kind of like the general first steps to kind of putting a game together here. So you have this mission guide, is what they call it, and this is sort of like the core around which the game is built. So what you end up doing is up here where it says villain dashboard, you place your villain dashboard. I know, sounds crazy, right? And then beneath that, we'll go over this in a moment. It gives you some information on how the villain is going to operate. No matter what villain you are playing, then beneath there are always 3 missions. So rescue civilians, defeat thugs, and clear threats. Okay, and I'll talk a little bit more about these again in just a little bit. But the basic idea is your overall method of winning the game is that you need to defeat the villain. And then in order to defeat the villain, you have to be able to damage the villain. You are not able to damage the villain until you complete 2 out of the 3 of these missions. And the way that you complete those missions is that you completely fill them up. So for rescuing civilians, once you rescue 9 civilians, that mission's complete. Same thing for defeating thugs. You defeat 9 thugs, you've completed that mission. Clearing threats, which we'll talk about shortly, if you do 4 of those, then you clear that mission. And then the idea is essentially when you clear one, things kind of slide over to the right. So let's say, for example, that you were able to clear 4 threats. This mission is now complete. Things move over. And at that point, you unlock this kind of first step right here. And now the villain's going to act more frequently. We'll talk more about that soon. Once you have completed that second mission, and it doesn't matter the order you do it in. You could do this one, you could do that one. The order for all 3 does matter. But when you complete another one, now the villain is vulnerable to damage. Now you can attack the villain directly. So from here, let me get some of this out of the way in order to talk specifically about the villain dashboard. So, and sorry, there's a little bit of glare. I have sleeved these, and these are a tricky size to find sleeves for. I'll have that information in the description. Do not worry. So a few things that you get. So obviously you get the name of the villain, and then over here in the left-hand corner, it tells you that for however many characters are on your hero team, how much health the villain's going to have. So in this case, if you have 2 characters, because you could play the solo, playing as 2 characters, Red Skull has 4 health. If you have 3 characters, he has 8, and if you're playing with 4 characters, he has 11 health. And then over here, there are a number of other important details. So let's talk about this part down bottom here. Every villain has kind of like something special that's going on, and a lot of times it's going to be an additional way that they can win the game. So here, for Red Skull, he has a fear track, and then it starts up over here at 0. And then when that fear track gets to 20, that is one of a few ways that the villain can win the game and the heroes lose. Every villain's also going to have a BAM effect. So for the villain cards, there are going to be some that activate that BAM effect, and if that does occur, then you complete that effect. For Overflow, there are going to be a number of different locations. There are going to be 6 locations on the board during a game, and throughout the game, you're going to be instructed to put either civilians or thugs onto those locations. If they cannot fit because all of the slots are filled, then you would activate that Overflow effect right there. So that is everything about the initial villain setup. All right, and with our villain set up and placed here at the center of the table, the next thing that you want to do is you want to set up your locations. Now the game includes extra locations, this way you have some variety, but you're going to always have 6 locations placed around the villain. So you just randomly choose them, and you can mix and match locations from different expansions. Now, the ones that you get within the core box are all, in general, kind of like Avengers or at least New York City themed. Now, again, it doesn't matter which ones you choose. I'm just going to mix them up. And then what you do is you place them around the table. And then, kind of like a pro tip, if you're playing solo, is orient them so that they are facing you. Obviously, if you are playing with multiple people, you're going to probably be sitting at different spots around the table, and you want it to be visible as best you can to everybody. And I mean, you can tweak these if need be, and if you're playing solo and you don't have this mat, there's like more streamlined ways that you can do this. But anyway, with all of the locations in general, there are a couple of things that I would like to kind of quickly go over. Let me try to bring this up so you can see it. So with this setup here, end of turn, these only come into effect if the threat is cleared, and we'll talk more about that soon. But when you set up, you want to put out here, you can see kind of grayed out the threat icon here. You can see a civilian icon here and a thug icon here. So when you have this all set up, what you want to do is you then want to fill out for each location, set those tokens up. So we put a civilian token there. We put a thug token there. And then we put the threat token there. And you do that for all of the locations on the board. And then after you've done that, in order to finish up setting up your locations there, every villain comes with a set of threat cards. So They come with 6, obviously 1 for each location. So again, give those a shuffle to randomize them a bit, and then you want to put them out face up so you know what's there, and you want to cover up the end of turn effect that you can trigger, because you can only trigger that effect if that location has been cleared. The other way to set this up, the other thing that you need to do is each villain also has a deck of cards that go with them as well. So same thing, you would shuffle them up, and these are going to control what the hero does, what the villain does over the course of the game. So this is called the Master Plan deck, and then this, can go wherever you want it to, but at least here in the setup that we have, it tells us to put it back over there. So at this point, for the most part, the only other thing you need to do before you begin the game is choose your heroes, and that's what we are going to do now. And so with your heroes, it's relatively simple. You just choose who you want to be, and you grab that deck of cards. So I've chosen to go with Black Widow. You can kind of see some detail on that mini there. Pretty cool. And you can also see same thing for Captain America, right? Looking sharp. And then each hero comes with a deck of 12 cards as well. And then a lot like what you did with the villain, you give those a shuffle. And then from there, you would draw 3. And that is your starting hand. And what I want to go over here is kind of like how the game is going to flow from this point forward. Oh, sorry, one more thing for setup here is we have to figure out where the villain is going to begin. So with Red Skull, who I didn't show off before, but looking super evil and grouchy right there. The way I do this, they don't give away. I just roll a die. So let's say that up top at 12 o'clock, that's 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Roll the die. We have a 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Red Skull is going to begin here. And then it tells you to place your heroes on the opposite side as the villain. And from here, you are ready to begin the game. So what I've done is I've taken kind of the game as we'd set it up before. I did some final touches. I added health to the supervillain and to their henchmen around the board. And I have just kind of tightened everything together. This way it's easy to see everything in one shot here. Now, I do think it's important before we fully begin to explain that the way that we win the game, quite simply, is by defeating the supervillain. And as a reminder, you're not able to do any damage whatsoever to the supervillain until you have completed any 2 missions that are here on the board. So until then, you're trying to kind of mitigate all of the bad stuff that's happening around you in the different locations, while also trying to make progress here so that you can go after the supervillain. Quite a bit to kind of juggle there. There are, however, 3 different ways that you can lose the game as the heroes. The first way is if the villain completes their villainous plot, then you lose. Now, in the case of Red Skull, he's trying to get the fear track all the way up to 20. At that point, the heroes lose. Another way that the heroes can lose is we have our master plot deck over here for the villain. If there's at any point where they would go to draw a master plot card and they're unable to do so because the deck has run out and they're all on the table in front of you, then the heroes lose. Finally, if for the heroes, if any of them are completely defeated, and that means that they have no cards in hand and they have no cards in their deck. So again, same thing for at least one of the heroes. If all of their cards have been played, then also you lose. And again, that's for any one of your heroes. So even if you have 3 heroes that are playing on the table, if one of them is completely wiped out, you lose the game. So the game always begins with a villain turn. But before we show that off, I'm just going to show you guys the general flow of how the game is going to go. You're going to create essentially a storyline. And in that storyline, the villain is playing cards, the heroes play cards. And the way that it's going to start off is that the villain will play a card. And then from there, the heroes are going to have 3 turns to play cards. So there's the villain turn and then 3 hero turns. Now we have Cap, we have Widow, we have 2 hero team. So essentially, and again, like you would get to choose, I'm just grabbing one to show this off here. you would have Cap take a turn. You would have Widow take a turn. Now we need to have one more hero turn before the villain goes again. So at that point, it's Cap's turn, alternating back and forth. Cap would go. Then after 3 hero turns have gone, then the villain is going to have a turn again. Okay, and then from there it'd be 3 heroes. Now in this case, after Red Skull goes, Widow would be the next one to go after that. And gameplay is going to proceed in that order for the rest of the game until either the heroes have won or the heroes have lost. The exception to that, however, is that once you have completed one of the missions on the table, and as a reminder, it does not matter the order that you complete these in. As soon as you do one, they essentially all kind of slide over. You open up that first effect that comes out of that. Then the villain becomes a little bit desperate, and rather than the villain acting after every 3 hero turns, instead, the villain's going to act after every 2 hero turns. So we begin. We have things set up here, and I know it doesn't quite look like it, but we are set up opposite from Red Skull. Like if you kind of take a look, if you decide to use this setup here, like from where the heroes are, it would take them 1, 2, 3 movement to get there, or 1, 2, 3 movement to get there. So you are opposite, you are equidistant either way. So for the villain turn, it's going to always begin with them playing a card off the top of the master plan. So you pull a card. And the way that this is going to work is that you always resolve the master plan card from top down to the bottom. So the top number here tells you how many spaces they move. And they're going to always go clockwise from what I can tell. There may sometimes be some kind of other villains out there who have cards that I've not played with yet that go the other way, but it even has that helpful directional arrow telling you where to go. So in this case, you're starting here, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, he would end up there. It's also important to note that if he ends up in a location, let's say, for example, if this threat was on that location, the idea is whenever you see that bullseye, if he lands, if Red Skull finishes his movement on that spot, then you would trigger whatever that effect might be. Okay? Now, if you see the BAM symbol, then you would trigger whatever it says here on the villain dashboard. So in this case, you would deal 1 damage to each hero in Red Skull's location and increase the fear track by 2. We'll talk about damage later, don't worry about that, right? So you go from 0 in our case right now to 2 if there is a hero in the spot where he ends up when he BAMs. In addition to that, if you see that BAM symbol on that card, any other BAM effects that are out there on the table would also trigger. Now in this case, Crossbones has a BAM effect. You would deal 2 damage to each hero in his location. Heroes can prevent that, however, by taking 2 crisis tokens. Crisis tokens are these tokens here. And different villains use these in different ways. These can be given to heroes. These can be given to locations. These can be used in different ways. And kind of the villain dashboard and or their master plan deck might interact with these in different ways. And then, of course, Madam Hydra has a similar effect, but she's only doing 1 damage as well. The other symbol that you see on this first card that we've drawn is, so you see that bullseye again. That's the spot where Red Skull is going to end up. So let's kind of go through and do this in order. Red Skull is moving forward. So he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, ends up in that location there. Now, we take a look. The threat card that's there does not have that like bullseye something happens, so we don't have to worry about that. We now take a look at, from here, we have to resolve the BAM. Now there's no hero in his location. We don't have to worry about his BAM effect. We take a look at Madam Hydra. There's no hero in her location. We don't have to worry about it. Crossbones, same thing. There's no hero in his location. We don't have to worry about it. Now obviously, if you were there, you would be in kind of like a world of pain right now. You're taking quite a bit of damage if that was the situation. And then here down bottom, these symbols show you that you need to add either thugs or civilians to some of these spots on the table. The bullseye means the spot that Red Skull is in. So in this case, we're going to add it to his location. Now, if I kind of just nudge him out of the way for a second, and I know it might be a little bit tricky to see this, but this is filled up. We've got 2 civilians. We have 2 thugs there already. And it's telling us that we need to add 2 thugs. So we try to fulfill that as much as we can. So we add a thug, but then there's no more open spaces, right? For each villain on their dashboard, it's going to tell you an overflow effect. So if you were to add a civilian or thug, but they can't be added, then you increase the fear track by 1 for each token that you couldn't add. In this case, there's 1 token in that spot that we can't add. So the plot began at 0, now it's at 1. And then we take a look. In the spots that are adjacent to him, we add 1 thug to each of those locations. So again, if Red Skull's here, we add 1 there. We're filled up, but we're not overflowing yet in that spot. And then we do the same thing for the other adjacent location. Now, it's important to note, and let me just kind of grab this one because there's not a lot to put back. During the game, you're going to be rescuing civilians and defeating thugs, so these spots will open up. That grayed out symbol only ever matters for setup. So in the future, if this is completely clear and you have to add a thug token there, you can just put it there, no big deal. The grayed out spot only matters for setup. In addition, if it tells you to put out thugs and civilians and there's, you can't fit all of them, the game also tells you that you worry about putting thugs out there first and then civilians. So if there's ever, you can't fulfill that complete requirement, you take care of the thugs first. And at that point, we have resolved the villain turn. Now, there's one other possibility that might show up on the master plot card. And let me see if we are lucky. And we are. So every now and then, there's going to be some type of special kind of description telling you what you need to do. So again, just kind of be careful. And also, by the way, there are occasions where the villain just doesn't move. So if that happens, they stay there. But if there was any location effect that would trigger, it would trigger again if they don't move. Okay, so from there, villain turn is done. From here, we are going into the hero turns. Now again, we're going to have 3 hero turns before Red Skull goes again. And if this was a real game, Cap would already have a hand of 3 cards, and then Widow would also already have a hand of 3 cards, which I'll get ready now. So on the hero turn, the very, very first thing that you're going to do is you're going to draw a card from your deck. So draw a card, and then at this point we have 4 that I can choose from, right? Now, the way that this is going to go is on the hero turn, your first step is you draw a card. Your second step is that you're going to play a card into the storyline. You always have to play a card into the storyline. You can't choose not to. There might be some occasions where the icons that you have aren't helpful and you can't do anything. But if that is the case, there is still a card that you have to play. You can't choose not to play a card. So just kind of go over quickly what the different symbols are. So if you see a green arrow, that's going to be movement. So for heroes, when they move, one icon allows you to move 1 spot. Now, villains are going to always go clockwise, but heroes can go either way. So Cap, if I were to play this card, once you play the card, you have access to that symbol. So if I choose to do that, then I'd be able to either move 1 space there or 1 space here. The other option that we have is you are also able to, you've got the kind of attack or the damage icon here. Now you can use this in a couple of different ways. If you are in a location that has a thug, you can get rid of that thug by using that to deal damage to them. So at that point, you've defeated the thug, and then they go here onto that mission. And then when you defeat 8 more of them, you have completed that mission. If you are in a location with kind of like one of the henchmen or minions, so here I'm on the same spot as Bob. So if I was in Bob's spot, I could use that symbol to deal damage to him. So again, 1 symbol, 1 damage. So he starts with 4 health. If I were to use that, it would knock off 1. He'd have 3 left to go. If we were in the same location as the supervillain, and if we were able to attack him, so if we had completed 2 of these missions, and the villain can now be attacked and is vulnerable to damage. If you're in the same spot, you can also choose to do damage to the villain as well. So let's bring him back here. The other symbol, which we have not talked about yet, is this symbol right down here. So that yellow star is a heroic action, and you can use those in one of 2 ways. The first way is if you have a civilian in your location, you can use that symbol to rescue the civilian, and if you do that, you put them onto the rescue civilian mission there. 1 star icon or 1 heroic action rescues 1 civilian. The other way that you can use them is that there are certain threats where in order to get rid of the threat, you need to spend 3 heroic actions to do so. So if I were to take that card and play that card and use that symbol, I would be able to put 1 icon's worth of progress onto that. And then once I've filled that up, once there are 3, then that threat has been defeated. And then once that's defeated and gotten rid of, you take the symbol, you've cleared a threat, you put it onto that clear threat mission, and then once you've done that 3 more times, you would have completed that mission. We'll put that back there, and we will put this back over here. While I'm explaining those icons, it should also be noted that if, for any reason, you have one of these tokens, right? So if you have a token, and let's say, cap players over on this side. So they've got that token, they've got their cards here ready to go. If for some reason they have a token, they can also spend that as if it was a card that was on the field. But once they've spent it, it's gone. Okay, they can bank that, they can save it for whenever they want to use it. The last symbol, which we've not talked about yet, is a wildcard symbol. So if you play a card with this, you're able to use that as a movement, as a heroic action, or to attack and deal damage. It's up to you which way you'd like to use it. So let's do Cap's turn. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let's do this. So we're going to play this card right here, and when we play it onto the timeline. Now at this point, you kind of create like a little bank worth of actions that you can do. So I have a movement, and I have a punch, or dealing damage, or attacking, whatever the official name might be called for it. So I can do those in any order. If I want to do the punch and then move, I could do that. If I want to move and then punch, could do that as well. So for right now, let's do let's move Cap to here. We'll use the arrow to do that, and then we're going to deal a damage. There are no thugs in that location, only a civilian. So we'll do a damage to Bob, taking him from 4 health down to 3. All right. At that point, Cap's turn is done. The last thing that I could do is if you are on a spot where you have cleared the threat. Every location has an end of turn effect that you could trigger if you would like to, but that's only if that threat in that location has been cleared. Because Bob is the threat there and he has not been cleared, we can't do that. It's also worth noting that you can only do that end of turn effect once. So some of them, for example, allow you to go to any location around the board. You can't use that end of turn ability to go to a different location that's also cleared and trigger that end of turn ability. You only get one. That's it, period. Okay. Now at that point, Cap's turn is done. So here we go to the Widow player. They've got their 3 cards to begin the game, and they do the same thing. So they draw a card, and then from there, they're going to play a card. Let's go with, let's do this one. Okay. Now, we take this card and we play it onto the field. Now, this is where the game gets interesting, in that on your turn, not only do you use your icons, but you also add into that pool the icons of the hero card that was played before yours. And let's say, for example, that like Red Skull had just acted. If there was a Cap card over here, you can still use that. You just kind of skip the villain. You go for the nearest hero card that was already played. Okay. So what I've got to work with here within my pool of actions, I have 2 heroic actions, I have 1 movement, and I have 1 attack, damage, punch, whatever you want to call it. And again, I can do that in whatever order I would like to do it in. So let's do it this way. All right. We're going to use the stars first, and I'll use both stars in order to put some progress onto this mission right here. The next thing that I want to do is maybe I'm feeling a little bit nervous about how close this spot is to being filled up with thugs or civilians. So what I'll do is I'll use the punch in order to defeat a thug. And when I've defeated that thug, it goes here onto that mission. The last thing I have left is I do have a movement left. So let's do this. We're going to move Widow over with Cap, and then maybe next turn we can focus down and maybe deal some damage to Bob. Okay. And then here, again, if the threat was cleared, I could trigger that end of turn effect that's on that location, but it's not, so we can't do that. So we've gone villain, we've gone hero, hero. We have one more hero turn before the villain goes again. So Widow just went. We go back to Cap. Cap has his 3 cards. Very first thing we do, quiz you. Do you remember? You draw a card. Now from here, you are able to kind of choose what you're going to do. I'm going to yell at my cat so it doesn't jump on the table. And what we're going to do is we're going to play, let's do this card here. But actually, we forgot one thing. Bob has some text there that says that heroes starting their turn in this location take 1 crisis token. So Cat player takes a crisis token. And then we are going to play, let's go this card right here, leadership. So we're going to put it down. Actually, no, let's not do that. This is where you want to think, because this is where the depth comes in. You want to try to maximize what you're able to do, right? So, and there's my cat. Give me one moment, people at home. We're going to play this card. We'll be right back. And my cat's name is Chewy, and he is looking to have a starring role. So we're playing this card right here, and if you notice, it also has some ability text that we're going to be able to use, right? And we'll take a look at that in just a moment. You can, again, trigger this in any order. So if you wanted to do that first, you could do that first. If you want to do it last, you could do it last. If you wanted to, and again, I'm trying to nudge my cat away, so I apologize. Super professional here at Rec and Rule. You can kind of do it in between some of these icons that you're using. So for now, let's play it down. We have a movement. We have 2 heroic actions. We're going to move Cap over here. We are going to use the 2 heroic actions from Widow's card. We're going to use 1 to complete this threat, or to defeat this threat right here. So we filled up all 3 of these. So that threat is going to go away, which now opens this up. We've defeated that threat, so it's going to go here onto that mission. And we still have 1 heroic action left. We're going to use that to rescue the civilian that is here. We'll just nudge him over to make this open. And then the very last thing we have is we have this special ability here. It says that you give a wild card token from the pool. That just means your giant stack of tokens that you can use to another hero. So we'll do that. We will give that over to the Widow player. So at this point, we have gone with 3 hero cards. It would now be the villain's turn again. I'm going to pause a little bit, and we're going to pick up. We're going to talk about damage. One more kind of note to add about that, being able to use the icons of the card for the hero who went before you is that you can only use the icons. So here, like Cap's special ability, the leadership right here. Next time that Widow goes, she's going to be able to use Cap's movement, but she cannot use this. That's Cap's only, and only when you are taking your turn when you play that card right there. Okay. Now, another big aspect, important aspect of the game is taking damage. So let's say that the game has progressed a little bit, right? Cap is over here at this location. We draw our next card for the villain turn. So here we have our 1 arrow up top. So even though you can't see him from this vantage point, Red Skull moves his 1 spot. We activate the BAM effects. Now, there's a BAM effect for Red Skull, but there's nobody at his location, so that doesn't make a difference. But then we also activate any BAM effects on other cards around the table. So Madam Hydra, where Cap is, and let me just move her health over here with her too. It says to deal 1 damage to each hero in this location. Any hero can prevent this effect by taking 1 crisis token. Let's say that Cap is choosing to take the damage. He's not going to take the crisis token. I'll take the damage. I'll tell you guys right now, those crisis tokens you might think, can't be that bad. They quickly become pretty bad. When you take damage, for however much damage you take, in my case 1, you take one of the cards that are in your hand, and then let's see, these are all good cards. This would be a bad spot to be in. Let's do it this way. So we're going to take this card here, our double kind of punch card here. You take that card, you choose which one, and then you're going to put it at the bottom of your deck of cards. So you'll get it back eventually, but it's going to be a while before you see it again. If I had taken 2 damage, so for example, Crossbones, he has that same general effect, but you take 2 instead, I would do the same thing, but I would just take a second card and I would put it at the bottom of the deck. Now, if you get to a point where you just keep on taking damage, right? So let's say if I was in a really bad spot where Red Skull is there, he bams, right? I take 2 damage from Crossbones, like I need to get rid of my hand. At that point, I would, again, I get to choose the order that I put the cards at the bottom of the deck in. So I would put them over at the bottom, and then to signify that your hero has been knocked out, you kind of turn them over. And at that point, you cannot be affected by any game effects. So if, you know, that card where Cap can give a token to another hero, if another hero had a similar effect, I would not be able to get that. At the same time, I'm not going to take any negative effects from the villains either. When a hero is KO'd, you're going to also activate the BAM effect on the supervillain, but just on the supervillain. So at that point, when a hero is KO'd, it just triggers the BAM from the supervillain. It does not trigger it from any other effects that might be on the table. Now, this can potentially cause you to have a chain reaction. So let's say Red Skull, when he's got that BAM, he deals the damage to each hero in his location. So if there's a hero in his location, let's say Widow had 1 card left in her hand, she gets knocked out. So at that point, the BAM would trigger again. So like that BAM can quickly become a chain reaction. Sorry about that. I got really, really excited talking about that chain reaction BAM type of stuff and forgot to mention how you get out of a knocked out state. The way that works is on that character's next turn, you stand their miniature back up. And then during your draw step of your hero turn, rather than drawing 1 card, you draw 4 cards, so you now have a new hand of 4 cards. So there might be some occasions where strategically it is a good option to get knocked out, especially if you are kind of low on cards and you need some options. So at this point, you basically have a good feel for how the game is going to go. As a reminder, once you've completed any 2 out of the 3 missions, you are able to then start to attack the supervillain. And then again, you're going to follow that chain of villain turn, hero, 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 and then after 3 hero turns, villain. And then hero, 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 and then villain. It's going to keep going that way. Now again though, when you complete your first of your 3 missions, then the villain gets a little bit desperate, and now they are acting after every 2 hero cards instead. And then here you just kind of keep on proceeding until you have either won the game or lost the game. This is a game that flows pretty quickly, especially once you know the rules. Like, this is not super complicated. When you know how the game flows, it goes by quick. You can set up a game, you can play a game, you can tear down the game within 30 minutes. So what I would like to do now is just kind of give you guys kind of an overview of my impressions about the game and some ways where the game might be right for you, or some ways in this, it might not be the right game for you. So moving on to my impressions of the game. And as I said before, I'm a little bit reluctant to call this a review because even though I played a number of sessions of this, I feel as if I don't quite have enough under my belt to really give you a comprehensive review. So again, more impressions, right? To begin with, I think that they have done a really good job, despite the fact that this is a pretty simplistic system, that they have baked in a lot of variety. So, I mean, no matter what, like every hero is going to have combinations of the movement, of the dealing damage, of the heroic actions, of the wild cards in there. And every hero has kind of like different numbers of those. So I mean, Hulk is not out there doing many heroic actions, but he is jumping around like crazy and he is punching stuff. Cap, all American hero, so he is busting out the heroic actions quite a bit. Widow, a little bit more of an assassin. She is doing a little bit more punching out there. And then beyond that, for each hero, they have at least 3 cards, and most of them are 3 cards on the dot, where they have some type of special effect. So, of course, for Hulk, he is Hulk smashing. So, if he chooses to play that card, he's dealing damage to everything, everything else. So, not him, but if his buddies are there, they're taking a damage in addition to the villain, in addition to the thugs, and then the civilians are running for cover. Cap is out there. He is a leader, so he's out there helping his team. He's giving tokens to help them out and giving them what they need at the right time. They've got that wild card. And then Widow is a spy, so she's able to take a look, if we can focus. She's able to take a look at the villain deck and see what's coming, and if it's going to be really bad, she can put it at the bottom so that you don't see it for a while. And I think that's pretty neat. So those are just 3 of them, right? And that's not even talking about within just the starter. You also have Ant-Man, and you also have Captain Marvel, and you also have Iron Man. Iron Man can't be seen. Super blurry. Stealth mode. And then you also have, sorry, you got Wasp as well. Also in stealth mode. Tiny, can't see it. So within the heroes, there is a lot of variety. And as much as there's great variety for the heroes, even more so for the villains, and maybe even more important for the villains, because each one does bring its own flavor and its own unique challenges. Now, full disclaimer, the starter, not so much as some of what's in the expansion. The expansions get crazy with what some of them do. Doc Ock, for example, like actually destroys and removes the locations from the board. But the starter ones kind of give you a good overview of some of the different mechanics within the game. So, for example, Red Skull, he kind of gives you a good overview of everything, right? It's why they tell you to go against him first, because he does a good job of teaching you how to play the game. With Ultron, he's manipulating the thugs and the civilians around the board. And then with Taskmaster, he is playing around with crisis tokens in a way that the other villains, at least in the starter, don't do. And I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like, so you've got 7 heroes in the starter. You've got 3 villains there. Now, if you are someone who's going to play this game every single night and do 3 sessions every night, you're right. That is going to get a little bit old relatively quickly. But if you can only break it out a couple of times a week, I think there's a lot in there to start with, especially when you're talking about 35 to 40 for MSRP, and quite likely that you can find the starter at a cheaper price than that. I feel as if you're getting quite a bit of value for your buck right there. So next up, I want to talk about kind of the benefits and the drawbacks of the system being so simplistic. So as I said before, one thing I like about this is that you can set this up, you can play a game, you can break it down 30 minutes or less, and you are good to go, right? And if you want to play a few more rounds, you can do that. And it's not going to take you a ton of time from there. Now, for some people, that's a benefit. For me, like, my days are crazy, my nights are crazy. If I want to take 30 minutes to unwind, this is something I can do, bust it out pretty quick, good to go. The other thing that is great about this game is that if you have kids, and if you have kids that are in elementary, if you've introduced them to board games, you know that some board games that are like kind of designed towards kids, and I feel as if this is like nudging a little bit that way, or maybe more than a little bit that way, but some of the games designed for kids are painful. If I have to play Monopoly Junior one more time, my brain's going to explode. But this is a game that kids can play, and all you need to know are what the different icons can do. And when my daughter and I, like, we played this first, and then we also played a game with our wife a few days later. My daughter was explaining to my wife, and my daughter is 6.5 years old, how to play the game. For the most part, the cards that do have rules text on there are relatively short. They're relatively easy to understand. And for a lot of heroes, not all, but for a lot, they are all the same. So like they have 3 of the same effect, 3 of those cards in their deck. Some of them have three different ones, right? But for if you have a 6-year-old that loves Captain America, if they can remember what those symbols do, and if you teach them what the rules text does, they're going to be able to do that on their own. And you can allow them to make, the decisions, kind of like allow them to figure out, like, okay, look, what do you think is the best thing to do right now? And then see if they've got those problem solving skills. I think that that is something that is very, very valuable. And as a parent, not only to kind of see them develop those thinking strategies, develop those critical thinking strategies, problem solving strategies, but also to do it in a way where you're not wanting to rip your hair out because the board game that you're playing is incredibly boring or simplistic or a pain to break out and put together, or it's messy or whatever it might be. This is something that's great for families. At the same time, it's also something that's really, really good for solo players because it's not hard, and I think that the sweet spot as I've been playing is actually playing three characters at the same time. The reason why is, as I've said before, like it's not hard to take a turn. Now you do have important choices. You have to figure out, like, in some cases, you might have something you can do that's going to be amazing on your turn. But if you play that card, then the next character that's going to go, they're not going to be able to make use of it. So you've got to figure out, are you going to take a less effective turn on your own in order to kind of support the player that's about to come up? Or are you going to tell them that they've got to deal with it and you take that like big move right there? So there are some interesting decisions to be made. There were some early reviews that kind of criticized this game because it was a little bit too simplistic. And I'm not going to tell you that it's not simplistic. However, I do feel as if that there's some degree of depth. And I also really, really like that it's not a game where like I'm sitting there agonizing over every decision. I like the fact that this is a game where it does allow me to unwind a little bit after a stressful day. And there's value in that, right? There's value in a game that plays quick. There's value in a game that sets up quick and gets put away quick, and that you can kind of, be heroes, beat up a villain for 30 minutes, and then go to bed and not have to, I love Marvel Champions, but there's a lot of interactions in those cards. And if it is 10 p.m. at night and it's been a long day, and, just put the kids to bed, I am not necessarily in kind of that mental state to break that out. But, I would be in the mental state to break this out. And then beyond that, to move off of that idea a little bit too, I feel as if this is a great gateway game for people that might not be dedicated tabletop gamers. This is a game they can understand and play. If you are tired, as I am, of playing Cards Against Humanity for the billionth time, and once you start to get a little bit older, the shock value of hearing those things wears off, and it overstays its welcome super to an incredible degree. Maybe you've introduced your gaming group to, or not, you have friends over, you've introduced them to King of Tokyo. And King of Tokyo, even though it's a fun, like kind of 10-minute game, like you don't want to spend 3 hours playing King of Tokyo, but this is a game you can break out. And non-gamers can understand this game and they can feel as if they have power and they have control and they're making good decisions. And you take down the villain, that feels great. Or maybe you lose, but it's close, right? A lot of times when you lose, it's close. So you break it out, you go again real quick, right? And then maybe they've learned some lessons and then you've defeated that villain. And okay, you've got Red Skull. Can you get to Ultron now? Can you take him down? And that progression feels good. Then not only that, but once they're feeling confident with this, that's when you can break out something a little bit heavier. And if they're a Marvel fan, like, you break out Thanos Rising, or you break out Marvel Splendor, or Marvel Villainous, right? You've seen Joe and RJ and Frenchie and Kevin playing that on the channel. Or, right, if you feel as if you can rope them in now with that kind of cooperative play, Marvel Champions, which is a fun, amazing game. But if you are not accustomed to card games, that can be a little bit intimidating to get into. This kind of starts somebody down that path. And then also start your kids down that path too, right? So this could be something where, as my daughter, who is 6, once she's a little bit older, and not only is she able to read what's there, but also is able to process and understand it and apply it, now that might be a time that Marvel Champions is a game that we can start to play together, if that's something that she decides to get into. Um, Solo play, just really quick before I forget. They have a game mode called Shield Solo Mode, where basically what you do is you play 3 characters, you take all of their decks, and you shuffle them all together into one. I don't recommend it. I mean, maybe it's okay for the core set, but there are a lot of villains in kind of the expansions where that system is not going to work anymore. Especially because if one of your like if you get KO'd, if you lose, you do start with more cards in hand, but if you get KO'd, you lose, right? Rather than just kind of like being knocked down for a turn and you come back. There are some villains where you play against where just that's not going to work out. So it might be okay for the core set, but it's not hard to just play 3 different characters, right? Play it three-handed, which if you're not familiar with that, you're essentially just playing 3 players worth of characters on the field at the same time. So from here, I guess my overall advice to you is if you've seen all of this and this seems like it's appealing to you, I recommend that you at least get the base game. I know that there are some people who say that there's not a lot of game there. I disagree, especially if you have kids. If you have kids, this is fantastic. If you have young kids, this is even better because not only can you play it with them, but you can also play it solo once you put them to bed or with your spouse, your partner, and use it to unwind a little bit. Again, I love Marvel Champions, but I have trouble getting into the table right now because my work life is crazy, my home life is crazy, and I can't make it work. But I can make this work. In terms of expansions, if you like this and you really like it, start to buy the expansions. And I'm going to probably put out another video, hopefully soon, hopefully not in 4 weeks from now, where I go over some of the expansions that are available for this first wave of releases and kind of like which ones to prioritize if you can only get some of them. For now, though, I do appreciate you listening. I do appreciate you sticking around. I know I maybe got a bit rambly, but this is a game that I'm enjoying. And I hope also that if this is a game that you think that you would enjoy, that you pick it up. If you buy it, let me know what you think. And I hope that you guys are doing great. Check out all the stuff that we're doing through our various different outlets, and we will hopefully see you again soon.